For the next part of your project, we're going to be taking one of your blanks. Remember, we created 3 blanks total, and they all were the same exact size, and they're all equal. We're going to take one of them and make part A out of that, okay? Just one of those 3 pieces will be part A. And remember, not all 3 pieces from here on out will be the same. You're going to make one part A, one part B, and one part C. First thing you'll need to do is grab yourself a part A template. It looks like this. It has a total of 10 holes in it. 4 near the back center, and then 6 that go around the outside edge. So we need to trace all these out. First, lay it on top, trace them all out with a pencil. And the trick is, please, whatever you do, try to keep this still. If it moves on you by the slightest amount, it's going to offset your holes and nothing's going to line up straight in later steps. So trace out all 10 holes with a pencil. For the next step, you need to grab yourself a good old center punch. I have 6 of these in the woodworking cabinet. Remember, they're made entirely out of metal, have a sharp point on the end, and we always center punch before we drill any holes. And what we have to do here is we actually have to center punch a total of 10 holes. 4 in the center, 6 around the outside edge. Make sure you're using a hammer, not a mallet, that has a metal head. You're going to put it right on top, right in the center of that hole we marked out. Take your hammer, give it a nice little baby tap. Just make sure you don't hit it too many times or hit it too hard, or else you will split the wood apart and it'll act like a wedge and break your part or piece in half. You're going to do that a total of 10 times. So once we have all 6 holes center punched, we have to come over to this little guy here, the little baby drill press, the bench top, with a small little drill bit. And our job is, we want to drill a total of 6 through holes, holes that go the whole way through the project. Just these 6 here. You don't have to do the ones in the center, just the outside 6. So remember, it's a good idea to have a partner to hold this down, and you can keep the machine running while you're trying to line it up. Just make sure whenever you're moving this, the drill bit's not inside the wood. If that happens, you're going to snap the bit right off. So you can line it up. One person's going to line it up and stand on the left side. The other person's going to stand on the right side and operate the little handle, the wheel, and bring it down into the piece. And you're going to do that a total of 6 times. After you're done drilling the 6 holes on the outside, remember we didn't have to do the ones on the inside with a little baby bench top drill press. We have to work on these in the center. These are actually not just only going to be holes, but we're going to remove as much material as we can in this area using the Forstner bit. Just be careful, this thing's incredibly sharp and can hurt you if you're not careful. Again, it's helpful to have a partner with you. So our goal is we want to try to remove as much material as we can with the Forstner bit. That way we can chunk out the rest later in a few more steps. And this is going to be the slot for the phone. Before I turn the machine on, it's probably important and a good idea to show you how this contraption works. So this is kind of like a holding clamp to hold your piece so it doesn't go anywhere, but you also need a partner to help you out as well. Now notice how these little holes that we center punched, or these little dents, are closer to one side than the other. The ones that are closer to you, or the short side, should be like closest to the machine operator in this direction. You'll slide it through just like this, and then before you start the machine, you have to bring down the knob or the handle until the tip of the Forstner bit meets up with the hole. And once you're ready, you turn the machine on, you drill the whole way down through at a nice even slow speed, and then you continue the process by sliding it over and drilling another hole, and you do this 4 times until you have all 4 holes drilled out. Now it's important to keep in mind that one person has to be holding this board still so it doesn't go anywhere. The clamp does help, but the other person should be drilling through as well. And it's also helpful to have the vacuum connected as well as turned on too. Before you turn the machine on, follow the vacuum hose down to the vacuum itself and turn it on. If you did everything correctly, this is what your piece of wood should look like. So 4 holes total, top, the whole way through the bottom. So the next step, we have to draw some reference lines so that way we can knock out these little hourglass looking shapes. There's going to be 3 of them, and a little bit of a later step using a chisel and a mallet. Grab yourself a straight edge, and all we're really worried about is a starting point from right here to the other side, kind of like the peak or the one edge of the circle, and we're going to worry about this one and this one here. We're going to take the straight edge, line it up right on that edge, and we're going to draw a reference line the whole way across from one side to another. You're going to do that on one side, and you're going to do that on the other side as well. Next thing we need to do is take a pencil and scribble out this hourglass shape here. This is going to be the scrap area that we want to get rid of. Just like that. It's also a good idea to take your ruler and make reference lines on the back side because we just got done with the front. That way when we knock the pieces out, which there's going to be 3 of them, it's going to be pretty easy to see where the line lays on both sides. So make sure that you sketch that line out, or both lines, on the back side. So we have one that goes from one end to the other, and then the second one right here. So the next thing we need to do is we're going to be using this tool right here, which is called a chisel. They have red handles. This is going to be in charge of taking these little pieces and knocking them out. Now, here's how we're going to use a chisel. First, you want to take a look at the chisel. There's going to be a curved side, or like a slanted side, and a flat side. What you want to do is you want to make sure that the flat side is on the same side or the outside of this line here. It's also a helpful idea to be working on top of a drilling board or like a scrap piece of wood that we don't damage the table. And you're also going to need to grab yourself a mallet, preferably one that's either wood or rubber. Don't grab a hammer because we're going to be hitting on the end of this part of the chisel. You'll break it if you're not careful. So here's what we're going to do. We want to knock out one small little piece at a time. Remember, take the flat edge, put it on the outside of that line, and we're going to line it up right on that line, right just like that. And when we hit the hammer, just make sure that you don't hit too hard. If you do, you run the risk of splitting this whole piece across right in half, and you have to restart this whole piece all over again, which is not going to be fun at all. So we're going to do a few light taps on this side, switch sides and repeat, and then we'll flip it over to the other side and do the same exact thing. Once you make a few little impressions here and start to split the wood apart just a little bit, the next thing that you want to do is flip the piece of wood over to the opposite side and do the same thing. And it's just like a flip-flopping effect where we start out on one side and do the other, and we're just going to try to knock out this one piece slowly. If you try to knock the whole thing out in one shot, the whole piece, you run the risk of actually splitting it in half and breaking it. So we want to relieve the pressure just slightly, and it'll pop out. Also might be helpful once you get to a certain point and the edge of that the blade of the chisel is down in far enough, tap it down just a little bit, just enough, and then start to bend this back and pry just a little bit, not too much, just a little bit of pressure. And you can see the piece is starting to pop out just like very slowly and slightly. Do the same thing to the other side. apply back some pressure, and then flip to the other side and repeat the process. Once you get far enough, you should be able to just give it a few more taps and bend back just very slightly, wiggle maybe a little bit, and then your piece should be pretty much about ready to pop out. Might have to wiggle it back and forth a few times, but it should fall out just like that. And we're just going to repeat that process 2 more times for this one, well, 2 more times overall. 1 for this one and this one. So it's going to be one big elongated oval when we're completely done. So at this point we got all of our pieces knocked out. So this is pretty much what you're going to see for what your project should look like. You have your 6 holes that you drilled on the outside, and this kind of like elongated cutout or cutaway where the slot for the cell phone slides down inside. But the problem is at this point you can kind of see it's uneven. It's not nice and smooth, and you can get some splinters in there if you're not careful. We have to smooth this out. So for that, we're going to be using a file and placing this inside of a vise too to hold it still for us. So you want to open up a vise, place your project inside so there's a little bit of wood showing, and this is not too far down in. Take a file with a flat edge like this one here, and just go at an angle back and forth like this, and file this down so it's nice and smooth. The one thing I want you to be careful of is right here at the edges. We want to keep this nice and round. If you go too far into the corner, you'll actually start to chip this away, and it'll be like a nasty groove, and it won't be like a nice like rounded edge anymore. So push down just like this. Be careful on the edges, and just start to smooth out this side. Once you get done with this side, flip it over to the other side. Now you're done.